with a screen from Malone.
You say, well, maybe he's not off to a good start. Well,
We have a 33 all-time.
People get this rivalry wrong. Moses Malone did not hate Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He respected him. He called him one of the toughest centers he ever faced. Then he beat him anyway, on the biggest stage in basketball. In 1983, Moses Malone and the Philadelphia 76ers swept Kareem's Los Angeles Lakers in 4 straight games. Moses averaged more than 25 points a game. He grabbed 18 rebounds a night. He walked away with the Finals MVP trophy. Philadelphia had come close before and fallen short. Julius Erving had led the 76ers to the finals multiple times across the previous decade, only to watch the trophy slip away again and again, including a painful loss to these very same Lakers just 1 year earlier. Fans in Philadelphia, patient for years, had grown tired of near misses and second-place finishes. They needed one more piece, a center who could finally match up with the size and skill waiting for them in Los Angeles. For years, fans had argued about who the best center in basketball really was. That series ended the argument. But this is not a story about disrespect. It is not a story about one man tearing another one down. Kareem was already a legend before Moses ever stepped on an NBA court. He had the skyhook, a shot so smooth and so high that defenders called it unstoppable. He had championships. He had size, skill, and years of experience. Moses knew all of that. He said so plainly. Whenever anyone asked him about Kareem, he never mocked him. He never bragged about beating him. He simply studied him piece by piece until he found the cracks, where Kareem stood, when he liked to catch the ball. How far he needed to be from the rim to feel comfortable. Moses learned all of it. And in the biggest series of his life, that knowledge turned into a sweep. Even decades later, basketball historians and analysts still bring up this matchup whenever the conversation turns to the greatest centers of all time. Highlight reels rarely do it justice because so much of what made this rivalry special happened in the small details. A defensive adjustment whispered to a backup center, a blunt comment about a missed opportunity, or a single extra jump for a rebound that most players would have already given up on. This is the story of how a young, rougher player from Virginia grew into the one man who could physically wear down the smoothest scorer basketball had ever produced. If you want to see just how far Moses Malone pushed the sport forward, this is a story worth sharing. Kareem's greatness is not the villain here. It is the reason Moses's climb means anything at all. Beating a good player proves very little. Beating one of the greatest players who ever lived, after respecting him for years, proves something much bigger. So how did this happen? How did a center who once looked overmatched against Kareem become the same center who dismantled him on the sport's biggest stage? To answer that, we have to go back to the beginning, back to 1976, when Moses was still finding his footing and Kareem was already a king. By the late 1970s, the center position was the heart of professional basketball. Whoever controlled the middle of the floor usually controlled the game. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had grown up in New York City and became a champion at UCLA before turning professional. He won titles early with Milwaukee, then carried that same dominance to Los Angeles, where he became the anchor of a new Lakers team built around speed and flash. Moses Malone came from a completely different path. He grew up in Petersburg, Virginia, and became such a dominant high school player that he skipped college entirely, signing straight out of high school with the Utah Stars of the old ABA. When the ABA folded into the NBA, Moses eventually landed with the Houston Rockets, a young, hungry center with something to prove against a league full of established stars. When Moses Malone entered professional basketball, he did something almost nobody had done before. He jumped straight from high school into the pros. He was young, strong, and still raw. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, by contrast, was already one of the most complete players in the game. He had size, he had touch. He had the skyhook, a shot released so high above his head that almost no defender could reach it. Their first meetings showed the gap between them clearly. On December 10, 1976, Kareem outplayed Moses in almost every way. Kareem scored 18 points. He grabbed 16 rebounds. He handed out 8 assists. Moses managed only 4 points and 9 rebounds. It was not close. Kareem was the finished product. Moses was still raw clay, but the gap did not stay that wide for long. On February 27, 1977, Moses scored 19 points and grabbed 19 rebounds. Kareem still outscored him with 29 points, but his rebounding total fell to 11. Something was shifting. A few days later, on March 2, 1977, Moses turned the tables even further. He scored 26 points and pulled down 19 rebounds. Kareem scored 23 points, but managed only 8 rebounds. The scoring race was close. The rebounding race was not. By January 22, 1978, the pattern was becoming obvious. Moses scored 29 points and grabbed 18 rebounds, including 10 offensive rebounds alone. Kareem scored 22 points and pulled down just 7 rebounds. Moses was not copying Kareem's game. He could never out-finesse a player with Kareem's skill and touch. Instead, he built his own weapon. He used his strength. He used his balance. He used relentless effort near the rim to create second and third chances that other players simply gave up on. The contrasting styles was becoming clear to anyone watching closely. Kareem wanted space. He wanted the ball deep, close to the rim, with room to turn and release his hook shot before a defender could react. Moses wanted contact. He wanted to bang bodies, fight for position, and create chaos wherever the ball bounced. Neither approach was wrong. They were simply different answers to the same question. How do you control the paint in professional basketball? Kareem answered with elegance. Moses answered with force. And slowly, game by game, Moses' answer was starting to matter just as much as Kareem's. By the end of the 1970s, Moses Malone was no longer a developing prospect chasing a legend. He had become a problem Kareem had to solve every single time they met. On November 22, 1978, Moses scored 32 points and grabbed 21 rebounds. Kareem still played well, with 28 points and 11 rebounds. But Moses had clearly taken control of the matchup. Then, on January 19, 1979, the two centers put on one of their most dramatic head-to-head battles. Both men scored 34 points, but Moses pulled down 25 rebounds compared to Kareem's 14. The two were now trading blows as equals, and in some ways, Moses was pulling ahead. A few months later, on December 5, 1979, the two men played one of their most evenly matched games yet. Moses scored 32 points and grabbed 15 rebounds. Kareem scored 24 points and matched him with 15 rebounds of his own. Neither man backed down. Both were playing near the peak of their powers, and the league was starting to take notice of just how competitive this matchup had become. That same season, Moses was putting together an MVP campaign. He was not just a rebounder anymore, even though that was the label many fans and reporters kept using. During the 1978-79 season, Moses was one of only 3 players in the entire league to score more than 2,000 points. The other two were George Gervin and Lloyd Free, two of the most explosive scorers of their era. Moses believed the media overlooked his scoring because his rebounding numbers were so unusual that they overshadowed everything else he did on the court. Sports writers across the country spent entire columns each spring debating whether Moses or Kareem deserved the league's Most Valuable Player award. Some voters leaned toward Kareem's polish and his championship pedigree. Others pointed to Moses' raw numbers and the way he seemed to single-handedly keep his own team competitive on some nights. Neither side was entirely wrong, and the debate itself became part of what made their rivalry so compelling to fans who followed the league closely. Moses had a name for his personal territory near the basket. He called it the rack. Down at the rack, Moses played a style nobody else quite matched. He would tip his own missed shots against the backboard again and again, keeping the ball alive just long enough that taller defenders could not simply reach up and take it away. It looked chaotic from the stands, but it was not chaos at all. It was a plan built on timing, angles, and pure stamina. When Moses won his first MVP award in 1979, he joked that he never expected to lead the league in rebounding, adding that he got plenty of help because his own teammates missed so many shots for him to chase down. That kind of humor hid something important. Moses' rebounding was not blind hustle, it was a calculated skill. He read where a shot was likely to bounce. He understood angles better than almost anyone else on the floor, and every single one of those extra jumps chipped away at the height advantage that finesse centers, including Kareem, usually relied on to control a game. Teammates and opposing players alike described a level of stamina that seemed almost unnatural. Moses would go up for a rebound, get out-muscled for position, land, and immediately go up again before the ball ever touched the floor. He did this over and over, possession after possession, quarter after quarter. Most players tried once or twice and then gave up on a loose ball near the rim. Moses treated every missed shot as a fresh opportunity, no matter how many times he had already jumped that same possession. Over an 82-game season, that kind of effort added up into numbers that looked almost impossible on paper. Yet Moses produced them year after year with a consistency that few big men in history have ever matched. If Moses' talent proved he belonged in the same conversation as Kareem, one November night in 1980 proved something even more important: that Moses understood the game at a level far beyond his own individual matchups. Kareem was always at his most dangerous when he caught the ball deep in the paint, faced the basket, and worked one-on-one against a single defender. Moses recognized this pattern clearly, and instead of trying to guard Kareem by himself the entire night, he built a plan and handed it to his own backup center, Billy Paultz. Moses told Paultz to angle his body toward the baseline. The idea was simple: force Kareem away from the middle of the lane where his favorite hook shot lived, and push him toward less comfortable spots on the floor. Do not let him catch the ball deep and set up easily. The plan worked better than almost anyone expected. Kareem made only one field goal in the entire fourth quarter. He missed two crucial shots in the final 90 seconds of the game. Houston won, 107-104. With Paultz handling the primary defensive assignment, Moses was free to roam, conserve his energy, and strike when opportunities appeared. He scored 9 of his 17 points in that same fourth quarter and grabbed 3 of his 13 rebounds during that stretch. Houston's head coach, Del Harris, later said the adjustment let Moses fly around the paint like a butterfly, picking his spots instead of grinding through every possession alone. Paultz was not a star. He was a steady veteran who rarely made headlines on his own. But he trusted Moses' instructions completely, and he executed the plan with the kind of discipline that a good defensive scheme requires from every player involved, not just the star. That trust between teammates, built on Moses' credibility as both a player and a thinker, was just as important as the plan itself. This one game mattered because it proved Moses' basketball mind extended past his own body. He did not need to guard Kareem personally to help solve him. He could see the pattern, design the counter, and trust a teammate to carry it out. None of this meant Kareem had suddenly become easy to guard. It meant that stopping him required precision, patience, and a plan built specifically around his habits. Moses had built exactly that plan. If November 1980 showed Moses' tactical mind at work through a teammate, the spring of 1981 showed it applied directly to an entire postseason series. The Houston Rockets were not viewed as a serious threat heading into that postseason. They had struggled through parts of the regular season and barely secured a playoff spot at all. Nobody outside of Houston expected them to give the defending champions any real trouble. Moses, though, had spent an entire regular season studying exactly how Kareem liked to operate, and he brought every bit of that knowledge into a short 3-game series where a single mistake could end Houston's season immediately. Moses' Houston Rockets entered the playoffs as the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Their opponent was the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers, led by Kareem and a rising young star named Magic Johnson. The series was best of 3, and almost nobody expected Houston to survive it. Game 3, the deciding game, was played at the Forum in Los Angeles. Houston walked away with an 89-86 win. Kareem had been magnificent individually, scoring 32 points and grabbing 18 rebounds. He had carried the Lakers' offense for most of the night, but on the game's final possession, Houston's defense denied him the ball entirely. Instead of getting the ball to their most dominant scorer, the Lakers watched Magic Johnson drive against Houston's Tom Henderson. Magic's off-balance floater never even touched the rim. Houston survived, and the upset was complete. Afterward, Moses offered a simple but pointed observation. He said the Lakers should have gone to the big man. It was a comment that revealed something important about how Moses thought about the game. He was not gloating. He was not pretending Kareem had played poorly, because Kareem clearly had not. Instead, Moses was separating individual brilliance from team execution. He believed Kareem remained the Lakers' best option in that final moment, even after Houston had spent the entire fourth quarter trying to slow him down. That is respect mixed with honesty, the same combination that defined so much of what Moses said about his rival over the years. This upset mattered for more than just one series. It proved that Houston's approach, built around physical pressure and smart positioning, could beat a Kareem-led champion when it mattered most. It was an early signal of something bigger still to come. The following year, Kareem and the Lakers got their revenge on a much bigger stage. In the 1982 NBA Finals, Los Angeles defeated Philadelphia 4-2. Kareem controlled the interior against Philadelphia's centers, Darryl Dawkins and Caldwell Jones, and the 76ers simply did not have an answer for him. Philadelphia's front office studied that series closely, and they came away with one clear conclusion. If they wanted to beat Kareem's Lakers, they needed a center who could match his size and beat his strength. They needed Moses Malone. Houston, for its part, was entering a rebuilding phase and open to moving its franchise center for the right package of picks and young talent. Philadelphia's ownership, led by Harold Katz, saw an opportunity and moved quickly, unwilling to spend another offseason wondering how they might finally get past Kareem and the Lakers. During the 1982 offseason, Philadelphia acquired Moses from Houston. The contract they gave him was enormous for its time, 6 years and $13.2 million, described in reports from that era as a record deal. During negotiations, Moses made his priorities known clearly. He rejected any form of deferred payment, insisting on being paid immediately. His phrase for it was simple and direct: no deferred money, or as he put it himself, no fared. At the time, deferred payment structures were common in big contracts, letting teams spread out large sums of money over many years after a player retired. Moses wanted none of that. He wanted his money now, while he was still the one producing the numbers that justified it. It was a small business detail, but it said a great deal about how clearly Moses understood his own worth in a negotiation. That moment revealed a side of Moses that rarely showed up in interviews. He was quiet in public, but he understood his own value completely. He knew exactly what he brought to a franchise, and he was not afraid to say so when money was on the table. Philadelphia was not just adding a rebounder to their roster. They were adding the one center built specifically to challenge Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, physically and mentally, over a full 7-game series if it came to that. Moses joined a Philadelphia roster that already had serious talent. Julius Erving brought years of high-flying scoring and leadership. Andrew Toney provided a dangerous scoring punch from the backcourt. Maurice Cheeks ran the offense with steady hands, and Bobby Jones gave the team one of the best defensive forwards in the league. What that roster had lacked year after year was a center who could match up physically with the Lakers in the middle. Moses filled that final piece. Before the playoffs even began that season, Moses made a short, confident prediction about how the postseason would go. Asked to describe Philadelphia's path through 3 rounds, he answered simply, "Foe, foe, foe," his own shorthand for sweeping every series 4 games to none. Philadelphia did not sweep every round exactly as predicted. But the phrase captured the mindset Moses brought into that season. He did not just want to win, he wanted to dominate. To understand why Moses gave Kareem so much trouble, you have to understand how differently their bodies and their games were built. Kareem stood at 7 feet tall, with smooth coordination, soft touch, and footwork that had been refined since his high school days in New York City. His signature move, the skyhook, was released so high above his head that it was almost impossible for a defender to block, no matter how tall they were. Moses built his game on a completely different foundation. After jumping straight from high school into professional basketball, he grew into a frame of roughly 260 pounds. He played with a lower center of gravity, using leverage and strength instead of height and touch. Where Kareem wanted a clean, uncontested look at the rim, Moses thrived on contact, unpredictable rebounds, and constant physical pressure. The skyhook itself had a long history by the time Moses faced it. Kareem developed the shot back in high school in New York City, long before he ever set foot in the NBA. He refined it further after the NCAA banned the dunk in 1967, a rule that pushed him to find another unstoppable way to score close to the basket. By the time he reached the pros, the skyhook was already considered one of the most reliable shots the sport had ever seen. Very few players in history ever found a consistent way to slow it down. The Lakers around Kareem had changed too. By the early 1980s, Los Angeles had built the fast, flashy style fans came to call Showtime. Magic Johnson pushed the pace in transition. Pat Riley coached the team with growing confidence, and the Lakers surrounded Kareem with shooters and athletes who could finish plays in the open floor. Kareem was no longer the entire offense by himself. He was the steady anchor underneath a team built for speed. That made him more efficient in many games, but it also meant that any center who could slow him down in the half-court took away one of the team's most reliable weapons. Numbers from the 1982-83 postseason help explain exactly how this played out. During that playoff run, Kareem made 50% of his tracked skyhook attempts, producing an efficient 1.06 points per possession. Against a leaner defender like Portland's Wayne Cooper, that number climbed even higher. Kareem made 63% of his skyhooks against Cooper, generating 1.39 points per possession. Against more physical centers like Artis Gilmore and Moses himself, that shot became far less comfortable. Moses's method for disrupting Kareem was simple to describe but difficult to execute. He tried to push Kareem farther away from the basket than he wanted to be. He tried to change the distance and angle of every attempted skyhook. Instead of waiting to react once Kareem began his shooting motion, Moses tried to anticipate the release point itself, jumping early to meet the ball near its highest point instead of chasing it late. Former NBA player Paul Mokeski once explained the difference between guarding the two centers. Kareem's goal on any given possession was fairly easy to predict, since defenders knew he wanted to reach his preferred spot for the skyhook. Moses, by contrast, was far harder to read. He might shoot miss on purpose or by accident, jump again, recover his own miss, and either score or draw a foul, all within the same possession. Other physical centers around the league, like Artis Gilmore and Robert Parrish, gave Kareem similar trouble, using some of the same principles Moses relied on: strength, positioning, and a willingness to fight for every inch of space near the rim. But few players combined that physical approach with Moses's scoring touch and his sheer volume of rebounds. Coaches around the league began to take notice, and front offices increasingly searched for centers who could offer both size and relentless effort, rather than finesse and shooting touch alone, hoping to find their own version of the problem Moses had created for Kareem. In many ways, Moses's success against Kareem helped reshape how front offices valued the center position for years afterward. By this point in their careers, both men were firmly part of the conversation about the league's best center. Moses won 3 separate MVP awards between 1979 and 1983. Kareem, meanwhile, was already established as the league's dominant big man, with championships and individual accolades built up over more than a decade. Their meetings had become something bigger than one game, or even one season. They represented two completely different ideas about how a center could control a basketball game, and neither idea was wrong. Moses's style was simply and unusually effective against Kareem specifically. All of this build-up led to the moment that defined both of their careers forever: the 1983 NBA Finals. Moses had completely transformed Philadelphia's roster from the moment he arrived. The 76ers finished the regular season with a record of 65 wins and only 17 losses. Waiting for them in the finals were the defending champion Lakers, led once again by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The series opened in Los Angeles, where Philadelphia stole home court advantage away from the defending champions almost immediately. From the very first game, Moses set the tone. He crashed the boards on both ends of the floor, refusing to let a single missed shot simply end a possession. When the series shifted to Philadelphia, the crowd at the Spectrum sensed something historic building in front of them. Fans who had waited through years of near misses watched Moses control the paint with a physical style the building had rarely seen against a champion of Kareem's caliber. Every offensive rebound brought the crowd to its feet, not because the shot itself was spectacular, but because everyone in the building understood exactly what those extra possessions meant for the outcome of the series. The pattern was already locked in by then. The Lakers could not find a way to keep Moses off the offensive glass, and every extra possession created seemed to matter more as the games went on. Los Angeles tried different looks, different rotations, and different ways of fronting the post, but nothing changed the outcome. Philadelphia did not just beat Los Angeles. They swept them, 4-0, and Moses walked away with the Finals MVP trophy. The statistics from that series tell a story of complete and total interior domination. Moses averaged 25.8 points per game across the series. Kareem averaged 23.5 points. It was close in scoring, with Moses holding a slight edge while carrying an enormous defensive and rebounding workload at the same time. The rebounding numbers were not close at all. Moses averaged 18 rebounds per game across the series. Kareem averaged just 7.5. Moses collected 27 offensive rebounds across the 4 games, giving Philadelphia extra possessions that Los Angeles simply could not stop. Consider this: Kareem's entire rebounding total for the series was 30. Moses's offensive rebounds alone, the ones he grabbed off of missed shots on his own team's end, nearly matched Kareem's entire rebounding output for both ends of the floor combined. On the defensive glass, the gap was just as striking. Moses pulled down 45 defensive rebounds across the series. Kareem managed 25. Every one of those defensive rebounds ended a Lakers possession outright, killing any hope of an offensive rebound or a second chance putback. Every one of them denied Los Angeles a second chance to get back into a game they desperately needed. Kareem still held one clear advantage on that specific defensive end of the floor. He averaged 2.3 blocks per game across the series compared to Moses's 1.5. He remained a serious threat at the rim, but shot blocking alone could not offset the sheer volume of possessions. Moses was controlling elsewhere on the floor. Add it all up, and Moses won the total rebounding battle across the series by a count of 72-30. That gap remains one of the most lopsided rebounding differences in the history of the NBA Finals. Every extra possession Moses created for his team and every possession he ended for the Lakers chipped away at Los Angeles' ability to run their fast-paced offense the way they wanted to. Philadelphia's head coach, Billy Cunningham, said plainly that Moses was the defining factor in how the series played out. None of this happened because Kareem suddenly forgot how to play basketball. He still scored efficiently. He still protected the rim at a high level. He remained one of the greatest offensive weapons the sport had ever produced. But across 4 straight games, Moses controlled more of the floor than Kareem could recover. Philadelphia did not just win the series. They removed every path Los Angeles had back into it. This is really the answer to the question we asked back at the beginning of this story. Moses's respect for Kareem never made him hesitate or hold back. If anything, it sharpened his approach completely. He knew exactly how great Kareem was. That knowledge is precisely why he studied him so carefully, built specific plans around his tendencies, and attacked every weakness he could find, all while never pretending Kareem was anything less than one of the greatest players to ever step on a basketball court. The rivalry did not end there either. Years after that sweep, the two men kept meeting, and the pattern kept repeating itself in a slightly different form. During the 1984-85 and 1985-86 seasons, an aging Kareem still managed to average 31.8 points per game against a young, athletic shot blocker in Hakeem Olajuwon, shooting an excellent 63% from the field in those matchups. Against Moses during those same 2 seasons, though, Kareem's numbers dropped noticeably. He averaged just 22 points on 51.3% shooting. Moses, for his part, averaged 23 points and won the rebounding battle by an average of 12-5 per game. That gap tells us something important. Kareem could still punish younger, more athletic defenders using pure skill and finesse, even well into his 30s. But Moses's particular combination of lower body strength and relentless physical pressure kept disrupting his rhythm in a way that younger shot blockers simply could not replicate. This was not a fluke from one great series. It was a matchup problem that followed Kareem for years, built on a body type and a playing style that consistently gave him trouble no matter what season it was. By this point in both careers, Kareem was already closing in on the record books as one of the highest scorers the sport had ever seen. Moses, meanwhile, kept climbing the all-time rebounding charts, building a case that would eventually place him among the very best rebounders in the history of the league. Younger fans watching in the mid-1980s sometimes saw only 2 aging stars trading buckets on a random weeknight. Longtime observers saw something else entirely. They saw 2 very different blueprints for playing center, still being tested against each other years after their first meeting back in 1976, with neither man willing to give an inch to the other. And through all of it, there is no evidence anywhere that these 2 men personally disliked each other. They competed as fiercely as 2 athletes possibly could, but their public comments about one another stayed professional and, more often than not, deeply respectful. There was never a dramatic public feud to patch up later in life, because there had never been a real personal rift between them in the first place. Sometimes the fiercest rivalries in sports are built entirely on competition, without a trace of personal hatred mixed in at all. Away from the court, Moses Malone carried himself very differently than the image many fans had of him. Early in his career, a radio disc jockey in Salt Lake City mocked his quiet demeanor and his southern accent, nicknaming him Mumbles Malone. Moses never fought that nickname publicly. He believed that reporters would often write whatever story they wanted to write regardless of what he told them. So he chose instead to let his play on the court speak for itself and to communicate honestly and directly with the other players around him. Around his own teammates, Moses was a different person entirely. He led by example on the practice floor, showing up early and outworking players half his age well into his 30s. He rarely raised his voice. But younger centers who came through Houston and Philadelphia during his career often said they learned more by watching how he attacked every rebound than by anything he ever said out loud. His quiet nature off the court and his relentless effort on it were really two sides of the same personality. He let his actions speak, game after game, instead of chasing headlines. That is part of why his comments about Kareem carry so much weight. Moses rarely gave long public explanations about anything. When he did choose to speak up, whether it was about a specific defensive plan for Billy Paultz or a tactical observation after a playoff loss to the Lakers, it meant something. Those comments were not idle chatter. They were the rare public glimpses into how carefully Moses studied the game and the opponents standing in front of him. Moses Malone passed away suddenly in September of 2015 due to cardiovascular disease. In the days that followed, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar publicly honored his longtime rival, describing him as a model of competitive energy and class. It was a final, genuine tribute from one legend to another, offered freely, with no need for cameras or scripted moments to prompt it. Today, both men are remembered among the greatest centers to ever play the game. Kareem retired as the league's all-time leading scorer for decades, a record that stood for a generation before anyone came close to challenging it. Moses retired as one of the most feared rebounders the sport has ever produced, a three-time MVP whose relentless motor changed how teams thought about effort near the rim. Fans who watched them battle through the late 70s and into the mid-80s often say the rivalry taught them something about competition itself. Two players can push each other to their absolute limits, night after night, series after series, without ever needing to turn that competition into something bitter or personal. Neither man needed to diminish the other to build his own legacy. Their careers simply happened to intersect at the perfect moment, in an era when the center position decided championships and their 13 overlapping seasons gave basketball one of its richest, most respectful rivalries. Coaches still reference their matchups when teaching young big men about positioning, patience, and the value of a single extra effort play. Broadcasters still bring up the 1983 sweep whenever a modern center puts together a dominant rebounding performance on a big stage, using Moses' example as the standard almost everyone else gets measured against. There is a lesson in that for anyone who studies competition at the highest level. Respecting an opponent and defeating that opponent are not opposites. Sometimes they are exactly the same process. Moses never needed to convince himself that Kareem was overrated or beatable through wishful thinking. He needed to understand precisely why Kareem was so good, and then find the one combination of strength, timing, and effort that could offset it. That approach took years to fully develop. It cost him plenty of lopsided losses along the way, especially in those very first meetings back in 1976, when Kareem's experience and polish simply overwhelmed a younger, rawer opponent who had not yet found his footing at the professional level. But patience, repetition, and honest self-assessment eventually produced one of the most complete individual performances in finals history. In the end, Moses Malone's greatness was never built on tearing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar down. It was built on the opposite approach entirely. He understood exactly how great Kareem was. He respected the size of the challenge, standing in front of him every single time they met on the court. And through years of study, physical growth, and relentless effort, he became the one center strong enough, smart enough, and prepared enough to beat him when it mattered most. That is the real story behind the words, "He's the greatest." Moses believed it about Kareem completely right up until the moment he proved on the sport's biggest stage that he could stand right beside him as an equal, and on that one unforgettable night in June of 1983, even a step ahead of him.